What's up, basketball coaches, players, and fans? Welcome to the Pass First podcast, where we share our knowledge of the game that we all love. My name is Augie Johnston, and I'm here with my partner, Alex Angle. We hope you're able to take something away from this podcast that will help you in your basketball journey. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into today's episode. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and get right into this. This is our very first podcast that we're doing, so we just want to go ahead and give you guys a little bit of the background of why we started this podcast and kind of just introduce it and talk a little bit about that. We also are going to talk about our personal backgrounds with the game of basketball, so we can kind of just lay the groundwork of why we love the game and what kind of experiences we've had with the game. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we met through the game of basketball and some other topics as well, such as playing versus training and the balance that you need to have between both those, as well as playing for yourself or playing for the team. There's a balance there as well, as far as should I go and try to get my buckets, or should I go and try to create for my teammates? And that's a very interesting topic in itself. And then we're just going to wrap it up at the end. So I'm really excited for this podcast, you guys. We are now going to talk a little bit more about the podcast and ourselves. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass this over to Alex, where he can go ahead and take it from here.
Yeah, so I'm excited. I'm excited to finally get this going. And the main reason we've been talking for a while about, we have a lot of conversations about basketball in general, right? Whether we're playing pickup or we're just hanging out, we talk about basketball all the time. And so the point of this podcast is kind of to share knowledge with other people. Learn from other people as well. Hopefully build a little community with other like-minded coaches or coaches from all over the place, or players, or whoever you are that's related to basketball, and just kind of grow and develop. Obviously, you and I are both younger coaches. We're more towards the beginning of our career. You've got coaches that have been in it for 30 years. So if there's a way we can learn from new, old, anywhere in between, and kind of share what we know, I think it would be great, and it's a great way to kind of connect people all over the world or wherever you're at through basketball, which obviously is how we connected in the first place. So, talking about, I guess I'll go ahead and kind of give a little background personally on myself as far as basketball goes. Played in high school, and then was fortunate enough to go on and play in college. A couple of years at community college, which not everybody gets to experience. So did 2 years at Cuesta College in San Luis Obispo, and then was fortunate enough to move on to a 4-year school, Menlo College up in the Bay Area, which is at the NAIA level, and played my last 2 years there. Had a great experience all 4 years. My first 3 years, we actually won the conference, which I'm sure, as you know, and a lot of people watching, it's not easy to do. So I got to be a part of some pretty successful teams. And then from there, came back right after I graduated, started coaching at Cuesta, where I played, spent 6 years there as an assistant coach. Also did 1 year as an assistant coach at Cal Poly. And then just this last year, moved over to the high school level, took a head coaching job at Morro Bay High School for the girls basketball team. And I'm currently the girls basketball coach over there. So that's been my kind of journey with basketball and where I'm at right now. I'm sure you can talk a little bit more about yours.
Yeah, so I think the interesting part about this whole thing is that we have kind of similar journeys, as far as I know your background as far as being the underdog coming up and stuff. And I had that same experience too. I don't think neither of us were like highly recruited out of high school. So that's kind of, my journey was kind of similar in that way, that once I finished high school, I went and walked on at Cal State Monterey Bay, which is a Division II school up kind of near the Bay Area. And was able to earn a scholarship there and became the team captain, got some all-conference awards there. And then I was able to get kind of through some networking and through some accolades that I earned in college, got put in the position to go play in Europe, where I went and played in Germany for 5 years and then 2 years in Luxembourg. And during that whole time is kind of where I started to get my coaching chops. I was coaching youth teams out there. In the summer, I was coaching club teams every summer, training, got really heavy into the basketball training world, and grew the YouTube channel Baller Boot Camp up. And I did that for a while, and then kind of started to take coaching a little bit more serious when I got a freshman job at the high school here. And then I've been coaching varsity now for 2 years. Just finished my second year here at Atascadero High School. And yeah, just the same as Alex, just kind of always constantly looking for ways to learn. Like you said, we're more new in the coaching world compared to these other coaches that have 30 years. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And I hope this podcast is just a good opportunity to learn, and then also to teach and just network and meet all kinds of like-minded people. So yeah, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about how we met, and then I'll give my perspective, and then Alex can give his perspective, because I know mine was a little bit different. But so while I was playing in Europe, I knew that there was a player back home that went to Morro Bay High School named Dylan Royer, and he went and played at Cal Poly, and I know he was a stud. And I came home and I played with him a couple times, and I was like, wow, this guy's pretty good. And then about a week or two later, I was playing with him again, and then I realized that this wasn't actually Dylan Royer. This was Alex Engel, and I thought Alex was Dylan Royer the whole time. And
shout out Dylan.
Yeah, shout out to Dylan if he ever hears this. But yeah, that's how we met. And I'll let Alex just kind of explain what happened after that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while, so I'm sure we probably don't remember every single piece, but I remember it was at one of those Kennedy runs, those infamous Kennedy runs back in the day. And we came in, I think it must have been like my sophomore or junior year in the summer, and you must have been home from one of your pro seasons. And same thing, like I'd heard your name, but I didn't really know you very much because you were, I think, a senior when I was a freshman in high school. So never really got to play against you or anything like that. But then we're at this open gym, and you came in and started playing, and I'd heard your name, and I was like, well, as a basketball player, like, I want to see how good he is. It's like, it's great to hear the hype, but it's like, let me play him and see. And I remember you came out there, and I remember you were getting buckets. So I obviously right away I was like, yeah, you can play. I mean, definitely you're a pro. And then I think we only played like a couple times that first summer, if I remember correctly. And then we both went back. I went back to college. I think I went back up to Menlo, and you must have gone back to Germany. I think you were still playing in Germany at that point. And I didn't talk to you. Like, we weren't connected at all. We didn't, we weren't even like phone numbers, social media, nothing. And then the next summer came around, and then we like both went to that open gym again. And then from there, that's when I remember like us actually starting to kind of build a relationship, because I remember, actually, there's the one thing I do remember. I came in one day and I was like, hey, like, so man, I don't know if you remember me, I was here last year. And you're like, yeah, I remember you. And then we just kind of started talking. And then we started working out together that summer, I think, going into my senior year. And then, yeah, I mean, we just kind of became workout partners, and all from an open gym, and I think we must have we did that for a long time until you retired, basically.
Yeah. And something I want to add to that is that we also didn't just start working out together and stuff. We started coaching clinics. We started doing, the skills training workout stuff, the baller boot camp stuff. And now we run the Pass First AAU program together. So that's kind of what it's kind of led to now, as far as just over, I don't know how many years, 5 or 6, 7 years.
Yeah, probably like 7, 8 years now. And like you said, just started. And it was one of those things where I remember you were just like, hey, we should work out sometime. At like an open gym. And I've heard that, like, now that I'm like, a little bit older, on the older end, I've said that to people, like, hey, let's work out sometime, let me know. Oh, and people always be like, oh yeah, we'll do it. And they never actually hit you up. It never happens. And I remember you said that to me, and I was like, yeah, like, I'm definitely going to take you up on this offer. And I remember hitting you up, because at that time I didn't have like a ton of people. I mean, in this area, there's not a ton of people to work out with.
Mm-hmm.
I know I used to work out with like Raj. Okay. Shout out Raj out in China right now. I used to work out with him, maybe one other person in the area, but other than that, like, there just weren't people to be like, hey, let's go every day and get to the gym. So when I found you, it's like, shoot, that's exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah. And there's something to be said there too, because whether you're in college or, for me, I was playing in Europe, that off season, if you are not around your teammates, then it's really hard to get in the type of work that you need to be getting in. Like, so I would come back up from overseas, and I didn't have any teammates around here, or even know a lot of people. So yeah, I was always looking for workout partners. And yeah, so All right, let's go ahead and transition that a little bit. So yesterday we were on a call just talking about basketball, and we were talking a little bit about playing versus training and what it takes to become good, because there's so much talk nowadays about how AAU is bad and how the kids are playing too much. And yeah, there is some talk about, yeah, it's bad for the bodies, blah blah blah, but we're just going to kind of focus a little bit, I think, more on getting better as a player. So in your opinion, what is like the balance of how much should these kids be playing, looking for pickup games, one-on-ones, three-on-threes, five-on-fives, and versus how much they should be getting up jumpers, working on their skills, ball handling, finishing, that kind of stuff?
I think it's, if I was going to give it percentages, I'd say like 60-40. And 60% probably like working on your skills and maybe like 40% playing. Um, I think the reason I say that is because I think, if you take a week and let's say you take 6 days out of that week, um, one day you want to rest, right? 6 other days you can go work out. So maybe you take 3 to 4 days a week to work on your ball handling, to get shots up, and then you take 2 to 3 days to play. And you can kind of alternate that. So maybe, some weeks it's 50-50, some weeks it's 60-40, whatever. But you want to make sure that, it's great to get out and play. I think that's important. And I think that's one thing that gets lost a lot nowadays is a lot of kids, they have a trainer, that they work with, or they do some drills and then they think like, oh, I put my work in, like I'm good, I'm ready. And the drills are nice. And I remember we had this, little conversation the other day. It's like the drills are nice and all that, but they don't really prepare you for playing in a game as far as how to react. How many kids have we seen that can do crazy drills, but then you throw them in a game and they can't make a basic read, you know?
Mhm.
And you only learn that from playing pickup. Playing one-on-one is great too. 2-on-2, 3-on-3. I think those definitely have benefits, but that 5-on-5 it just teaches you how to play the game. You learn how to read things, how to make the right plays. And especially if you're like a younger player, a high school player, go play against older guys. I know when I was like a junior or senior, that's when I started kind of really getting into the open gyms with the older guys. And it just makes you so much better because even if they're not great players, they're bigger, stronger, usually probably as athletic or more athletic than you are. And they've been playing a little longer, so they know the game. So I think you got to definitely balance it, but I would say maybe a little bit more on the training side, just because if you don't work on your skills enough and you just go play all the time, you're still going to be that same player that you've been the whole time. You're not going to actually improve. You can play open gym 5 days a week, but you only get so much improvement out of that. To actually work on the individual skills, you got to do that training. Get those 500 jumpers up, whatever it is, and then you take those skills and you implement them into 5-on-5. That's how I think how you improve the most, mixing it like that.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I mean, like you said, in the skill development world and stuff, you can do stuff that's gonna, make somebody react to something. Like, for example, a player dribbles up at you, you put your hands down, he's supposed to shoot the ball. If you put your hands up, he's supposed to drive by you. But the problem with that is that the player is 100% focused on what they're seeing right in front of them. When in the game, you better have your head on a swivel. And if somebody's all of a sudden falls down and they're wide open underneath the basket, you got to be able to just fire the ball. And you can't be focused 100% on, am I shooting or am I driving? And that's the stuff that you can only get in 5-on-5. I would say that, just to kind of play a little bit of devil's advocate, but I would switch it. I think that those scrimmages and those pickup games, and just even the playing in an AAU game, has, I would say, 50-50 or 60-40 in the other way, because I just know for myself, growing up, I played a lot more than I actually did skill work. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt like once I was able to really kind of get in the gym and get my shots up and stuff, then I was able to translate it over to the playing side a little bit more, as far as becoming a better shooter. But I don't think the foundation would have been set for me as a good basketball player, instinctual wise, and just being able to say like, hey, this guy knows how to play. His IQ is there. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I would agree with you that there is a balance that you need, and it can't be all one or all the other. I know there are those certain people though who, like the Larry Bird. right? Like Larry Bird grew up on a farm shooting jumpers in the driveway on a dirt driveway. He wasn't playing a lot of pickup. Maybe the times are different now, but there is an argument that's out there that says, the skill development's all you need. But from my experience, and it sounds like from your experience too, that's not the case for us. Just as a kind of a follow-up question,
Yeah.
um, as far as training, what should you be doing in your training? What percentage of your training do you think should be ball handling, finishing, shooting, and strength training, everything? How would you break that down?
I think with the ball handling, shooting, and finishing, as much as you can, try and do that in thirds. If you say like that's your offensive basketball workout, you're doing 33% of each. If you can. Um, I think, I guess it depends on what your weaknesses are. If you're fairly balanced in all three, then you can probably kind of do it like that. If you're not a great shooter and you're pretty decent ball handler and pretty decent at finishing, you probably want to gear more of your workout towards shooting. You want
Mm-hmm.
to improve on your weaknesses. So I guess like in a generic sense, you want to do all three evenly, right? But realistically, how many players are perfectly balanced? Like probably barely any. So you're probably going to want to I would gear one towards whatever your weakness is, and then split the rest of your time between the other two. Assuming that's how your game already is. Um,
Yeah.
but that's hard.
Yeah, that makes sense to
No,
me.
go
I
ahead.
think I remember back when I was really like on my training grind and stuff, I would look at my week and I'd always say like, okay, I got like 2 hours, sometimes 4 a day that I'd be able to work out. And so you really have to kind of like prioritize. I mean, if you have 2 hours in total and you're going to go and lift weights for an hour and a half, then, those last 30 minutes is all you're going to get in the gym. Then I think you might be messing up. So in my opinion, you got to look at kind of your time. How can you divide it up? Because if you have 8 hours to train, then you probably are going to do, 500 jumpers, blah, 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 and really get up all the reps you can in the gym. But if you have 2 hours, then I would say probably like I'd want to spend, an hour shooting out of my 2 hours every day. And I'd want to spend, maybe 10 to 15 minutes on my ball handling, 10 to 15 minutes on my finishing. And then whatever's left, I would use on, strength training, all that kind of stuff. It's my 2 cents. So,
Yeah, and I didn't really talk about the strength training too much, and I guess I kind of feel like that's almost like a separate thing. Like you have your basketball time and then you have your weights time. So I guess
mm-hmm.
that's why in my head I don't really think about it like that. But I don't know. I do think weights are important. Like you probably should be lifting, 3-4 days a week, but that's got to be like extra time on top of basketball. That can't eat into your basketball time, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of take that out of it.
Okay. Let me think. So when talking about playing, so what do you think about this opinion? So I've heard this a lot of times that you shouldn't play against scrubs. You shouldn't go and like, let's say my only opportunity that I can go and play some pickup ball is going to be with a bunch of guys that are maybe, let's say 50 and up. And is there value there, or is that wasting your time? What's your opinion on that?
I think if you don't have anything else, then there can be value in it. Like if that's the only competition you have to play against, then you go play against them because you still get to go up and down. They may not have the physical abilities, if you're 20 and they're 50 that you have, but they may have the IQ. You know what I mean? They may have something else that they can still play like a team or understand the basics of the game. And it just gets you in that feeling of getting up and down the court. So yeah, I mean, ideally you're playing against guys that are equal or better than you, because that's going to make you better. I mean, realistically, you want to play against guys that are a little bit better than you. But if you don't have anything else, I still think there's benefit to going out and playing with older guys and just getting up and down, because then you can work on your own like individual skills in the game more. Because that like I'm going to get the ball the most. I'm probably the best player. I can kind of take shots that maybe I normally wouldn't take, and work on things that way. I think that's still better than just like, oh, I'm only just going to go do skill work. I'm never going to go play open gym at all.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think it's a good time to work on your weaknesses, like you said, and maybe play a little bit different role than you normally play. And it's always good for the cardio, the agility work, the defense, right? When are you really going to get to work on defense? So I was always a firm believer of you play when you can play, and especially in our area, it's not like we have open gym every single day of the week that we can go to even. So all right, let's go ahead and transition a little bit away from this playing versus training topic, and let's talk about another topic that's a little bit related, but not 100%, and that's playing for yourself versus playing for the team. And what we mean by that is there's a balance, right? Like you're trying to get to that next level. You're trying to get recruited to go play college basketball. You need the stat line, but you also need the wins. How do you find a balance between trying to get your stats and doing what's best for the team?
I think there's a few different factors here. The first and foremost is that if you are trying to go and you want to play in college, you want to be a part of a winning team, right? I mean, I know there are a lot of people like still don't believe this, but college coaches, and I can tell you because, like I said, I've had this experience at a JC level and at the D1 level. Like, college coaches want players from winning programs. If you average like 15 on a team that won 25-5, you're probably going to get recruited over a kid that averaged like 21 on a team that went 2-20.
Right.
Because that team that went 2-20, if you didn't beat anybody, they're empty stats basically. Obviously, are there outliers to that? Sure. If there's some guy averaging 35 and the team only won 10 games, he may still get recruited because that's, 35 is a lot of points. But for most people, for 99% of people, winning teams, guys that put up stats on winning teams are going to get more, results than guys that put up stats on losing teams. So as far as playing for yourself versus the team, if you're not doing something to help your team win and you're just being selfish and your team's losing because of that, you're actually hurting your chances to get a scholarship. And you're also, I think, going to alienate yourself away from your teammates, honestly, from your coaches. Coaches are more likely to put extra effort and help people that are, for the team, want to help the team, than they are for someone that's really selfish. I mean, that's just human nature. As much as people want to pretend like that's not the case, like it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think you got to find your role and find what you're good at. If you're a great 3-point shooter, then you've got to be a great 3-point shooter, and that might be your role. And you can still get recruited for that, specific thing. But once you start trying to just be like, oh, I'm just going to get mine and I'm not worried about my team and all that, I think that's more oftentimes than not, you start hurting yourself as well as the team, and your odds of getting recruited are less, because coaches see that stuff. Like, when we watch a game, we see how you act with your teammates. We see how you act on the bench. We see when you come out of the game, if you're like upset and like hanging your head and complaining about it. Because there's a million, realistically, like, I don't say there's a million, but there's lots of guys in high school that have some of the tools to play in college. And so what coaches start looking at is like, well, what are the other things he does? Is he a good teammate? Is he good at academics? Is he respectful? That's what they're looking for, because they don't want to deal with a kid that's like a spoiled kid. Nobody wants to deal with a pain in the butt, especially in college. So I think you got to kind of keep all that into focus. And it's hard sometimes, because you're like, well, crap, if I don't score enough points, I'm not going to get recruited. But you can still be effective without necessarily scoring 20 points a game.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's the right perspective and the same perspective that I share. But at the same time, I think that's definitely the coach's perspective, 100%. Because, looking back, I wouldn't change anything about how I played my high school career. I was a pass first player. I was a team guy, 100%. There was games where I didn't shoot the ball, or I shot maybe one time, and the kind of the devil on one shoulder is telling me, hey, if I was to go back and tell myself what to do in high school in order to improve my basketball career, one of the things selfishly would be to, hey, you're going to have to get those stats up a little bit, buddy, if you want to earn a scholarship right out of high school. And I think everyone would agree with that to a certain extent. But at the same time, I don't agree with that philosophy. Like, I wouldn't want my players to think that. Like, you mentioned what I was going to say at the end there about the role. It's all about your role. You have to be a star in whatever your role is. And if your role is to be sitting on the bench and getting water for other guys, then embrace that role and be the best you can in that role, and, be ready at practice. And if your role, like you said, is to shoot the ball and shoot threes, then embrace that role. And, different roles call for, different things. So you just got to be ready to do that, whatever your role is. But yeah, with all that said, the nowadays I think it's harder than ever for players to play in that team role because of social media, because nowadays players understand, like, I don't know about you, but I didn't understand that, you know stats matter, that all that kind of stuff actually does mean something. And I don't know,
Mhm.
what were your thoughts in high school? Were you even looking at a stat book? Were you even I wasn't at all. I didn't even second give that stuff a second thought.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did to an extent, but I wasn't like obsessed with it, you know. I wasn't gonna go out there and just jack shots because I knew like, okay, if I hit them, sure, great, I'm gonna play. But if I'm missing, like, I'm gonna get yanked. And I valued my playing time over that. I
Hmm.
wasn't really like
Yeah.
ready to risk my playing time for that. And kind of touching on what you just said about like, if I went back, would I maybe shoot a little more? Like, I'd probably say the same. Yeah, I'd probably be a little more aggressive. But I don't think there's anything wrong with necessarily being like, hey, I could have been more aggressive because you recognize maybe you weren't aggressive enough at times. And I think there's a difference between that and being like, hey, no, I could be more aggressive and be still efficient, or like, I'm just going to be selfish, you know? Um,
Hmm.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that, with like being like, hey, no, like I could take two more shots a game because they're open and I'm passing them up. Like, why am I passing them up? And so I just think I don't want us to put this idea out there that's like, oh, don't be aggressive, just be okay with whatever your role is and that's it. Like, no, you can try and do more, but there's got to be like, there's a fine line you're walking when you're doing that, you know.
Hmm.
And you've got to find, you can't push so hard that you disrupt the entire team.
Yeah, no, I agree. And every team has somebody that has that role where, hey, shoot, keep shooting. As long as you're open, keep shooting.
Mhm.
And everyone has that, that one player that's normally their go-to guy. I mean, it's just kind of the chemistry of basketball teams in general. You look for that guy, because if you don't have that guy, then you're in trouble to a certain extent.
Right.
But with that said, it's hard to know if you are that guy or not. I think for a lot of players, players are
Mhm.
struggling with confidence and they're insecure, and then and that's how I fell more into that boat. And then you have the other side of the boat where they're overconfident,
Mhm.
and those are the type of players that really hurt your team, really hurt your
Yeah.
team. Yeah. But
Yeah.
there was a time when I was that guy getting those shots and being ultra aggressive, and that was definitely in Europe, right? So in college, in high school, I was a pass first point guard. In college, I developed the jumper, became more of like a Ray Allen type, just catch and shoot, jump, don't dribble, blah blah blah. Once I got overseas, and it was my job to score the basketball and to put up the stats, that was definitely a mind shift that I had to go through to be like, okay, hey, no matter what, I got to jack up shots right now. And it wasn't from a selfish point. It was from an understanding of, hey, I need to, I can't just be the lowest scorer on the team. I'll get fired. It came from
Mhm.
that understanding, but it didn't come from an understanding of, hey, I'm trying to just get mine. I don't care about winning. But it was more from the understanding, like, hey, if I don't score these points, then we're probably going to lose. So got to
Mhm.
stay aggressive. And I remember even the very first game I played in a super low level in Germany when the competition was low, and one of my teammates he was like, "Can I give you a piece of advice?" And I was like, "Yeah, what is it?" It was like right before my very first game. He was like, "Be very aggressive." So I was like, "Okay." So they're kind of expecting it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah. So as a coach, how do you communicate that to your players as far as not destroying their confidence? If there's somebody that you don't want to maybe be shooting threes, let's just use that as an example. You have a player that you don't want shooting threes. Are
Mhm.
you going to, or let's make it a little more tricky, because obviously you can just, our job would be to tell them, hey, let's hopefully you get a better shot inside, blah blah blah. We would just
Mhm.
straight up tell them. But let's say you have a player that maybe he's like your third best or fourth best 3-point shooter, and and there's a few games where he's shooting, 6 threes a game, 7 threes a game. What kind of conversation do you have with him then at that point?
I think it depends kind of, for me, it kind of depends on the shot selection. Um, if he's, if he or she is taking, wide open shots and there's 6, 7 shots a game and they're wide open, like, honestly, I think personally, I would say, hey, you got to shoot them. If you're a decent enough 3-point shooter to take those shots, you know what I mean? You got to shoot them, but there may come a time where we might say, hey, like, let's look for someone else. I'm not a big fan of like giving people the red light and being like, stop shooting, because I think that just kills confidence and you're just destroying them as a player personally. And I just feel like, generally speaking, if you're getting a wide open shot, and it's someone who can shoot a 3-pointer, then you're getting a pretty decent look at scoring. Yeah, obviously we would love if it was our best top 2 3-point shooters every time getting those open shots. But that's just not the reality, because good teams are going to take away those shooters sometimes, so someone else has got to step up. And I guess if you're saying like, if I absolutely have to tell them not to shoot as much, I guess I would say, hey, make sure we're taking good shots. Because how often is it that you have a guy taking 6 or 7 threes a game and they're all really wide open? Like, most
Right.
of the time, I feel like that's very uncommon, that like a guy that's like a fourth option is getting 7 wide open threes and going like 2 for 7. You're like, dang, like I wish he wasn't. I wish someone else was taking those shots. Usually it's like, okay, the fourth guy is taking your shots and he's 2 for 7, but like 4 out of the 7 are really heavily contested.
Right. Hmm.
So in that scenario, I guess I would say, hey, let's just look for the open shots. If you're only getting 3 or 4 open shots a game and those are the wide open, I'm fine with you taking those, but let's cut out those contested ones. But you have to keep that balance with everybody. Like, you kind of have to keep that
Yeah.
same fairness with even your best shooter. You don't want them, unless the shot clock's winding down, you don't really want your best shooter to be taking a 25-footer with someone in their face. I guess if they can hit that shot consistently, then sure. But I mean, how many people can really hit those? Unless you're an elite player, most players aren't hitting 25-footers contested like at a consistent clip. So I think that's kind of the route I'd go. I don't know if that answers it perfectly, but
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That made perfect sense. I too am in the same boat. I try not to tell players that they can't shoot, but I do try to use terminology and just phrasing that would hopefully help them make the right decisions, in as far as, even if they are wide open 7 times and they're not a great shooter and they're 0 for 5 and the 6th one comes and they're wide open and we're down now because we're missing all these shots. I would hope that they would be able to make the decision themselves not to shoot it, just by talking through our terminology: play your strengths, hide your weaknesses. That's something that I preach a lot. Don't shoot yourself out of it. That's something that I say sometimes, because I feel like that'll happen. You'll go into a game and you'll end up shooting 33s and you'll lose because it's a 10 for 30 or maybe even a 5 for 30 type game. And I guess I would take a 10 for 30 game right now, but a
yeah.
5 for 30, I don't know if I want that. And
No.
yeah, like, where's our IQ? Are we really just going to keep missing and not and take the first shot we get, or are we going to say, hey, let's get the ball to the free, down low, so we can get some free throws, so we can, there's a team that we should beat. Why we got it's almost like you're risking it all on having a good shooting night, especially if it's a team you're supposed to beat. But yeah, okay, I don't think we need to beat a dead horse right now, but I think that players, like I said, fall into those 2 different buckets with that kind of stuff. There's either the ones that are, you can trust that you want to shoot even more, but their confidence is kind of like, once they miss 2 in a row, they're not going to shoot again. And then there's the other bucket where they think that any time they touch the ball, they're going to shoot it. So I guess for me, as far as the communication that goes with those players, it depends individually, I think, on those players, because like you said, you don't want to crush the kid who's already struggling with the confidence, who could be a good shooter. You don't want to crush it by saying, hey, why don't you, shot fake on that next one or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, you got anything else to add on the topic or anything else? Otherwise, we're going to probably wrap this up here in a minute.
No, I mean, I think we pretty much hit everything on that one.
Okay, cool. So like I said, this is the first one. We're going to start pumping these things out and just having great basketball conversations. And we hope to eventually get some people to listen to these as well and give us their feedback, get involved. Hopefully our plans are to maybe bring on some other people that we can interview and that we can just learn from and hopefully all learn together. So that's it for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening to the Pass First podcast. We will catch you in the next episode.
Peace.